Tom, Conrad, and Sarah Lane are next. Last year we had Deezer and Spotify on stage talking about music, and of course connecting objects and music is a very important topic. I was just talking to Tom, who told me I think he has 75 different cars with Pandora in it. So help me welcome Tom Conrad, who is the CTO and head of product of Pandora, and Sarah Lane, who is the host and producer, one of the hosts of the Tweet Network.
Good morning, everybody.
Hello.
Hello, Tom.
I'm still kind of charged up from the Domino's guy.
Well, you know, he was backstage reading the tweets that were coming in afterwards.
I love him.
I'm glad we didn't follow him directly, because our energy could never be quite that high.
Yeah.
So this is your first LeWeb.
Yeah, my very first.
Now, I know we've talked about in the past the reason that Pandora didn't make more of an effort to be at LeWeb was because you don't actually have a huge European presence.
Right, yeah. So it's kind of fun for me to be in this environment, though, because I've been with Pandora for 8.5 years, all the way back to the beginning. And in some ways, the most exciting chapter, I think, was that part in those first years where we were out telling the story to an audience that didn't know about us at all.
Yeah.
And so it's fun to be in Europe and to get to have that experience all over again.
You've been here for a few days. I mean, do you find that that people say, "Oh yeah, Pandora, wish I could use it," or more like, "What is Pandora anyway?"
Yeah, I'm certainly getting a lot more questions about what is Pandora here than anywhere else I've recently been.
Maybe we should answer that question.
We should probably answer that. So, Pandora is a personalized internet radio service. So the basic idea is that you tell us the name of an artist, a genre, or a song that you love, and then we create a kind of endless stream of music that personalizes to your taste as you give us feedback. And you make channels inside of Pandora, or stations inside of Pandora, you know, each tailored to some independent kind of musical mood that you might have. And the emphasis for Pandora really is on this incredible simplicity. So you press a button, music that you love comes out, and there's really no more effort to it than that. We're really focused on personalization. How do we make the very best playlist in the world? And then how do we deliver that experience ubiquitously to not just on the web, but to every cell phone and to every consumer electronics device and so forth. Yeah.
So then the next question, logical question is, why aren't you in the European market? You've got, what, about 60 million active users in the US? Is that
60 million in the last 30 days, 175 million registered. I think we're about over 75% of internet radio listening in the US. So
obviously it's a model that a lot of people really like. Why not expand?
We would love to be here in Europe and everywhere in the world. And actually, the most exciting news on that front is that we've spent the last 30 days or so, or sorry, the last 90 days or so in a kind of beta launch in Australia and New Zealand, and talking about that kind of startup experience. I mean, that's really the thing to get to interact with a new market and to be the new player on the scene is a great deal of fun. Actually, next week, our founder, Tim Westergren, is going to be in Australia and New Zealand having these town hall meetings with our early listeners there, getting their feedback. That's something we've done through the whole history of the company as a way to really connect with listeners and to one of the ways that we pursue just kind of having this very transparent, very one-to-one relationship. We do that in the product, but then we also try to get out in the world and meet people who are listening as well. And so kicking that off in Australia and New Zealand. But the reason that we're not here today is really all about music licensing, which is an incredibly complex and woefully boring topic.
There's a royalty fee structure that works for you in the US, but it is complicated.
Yeah, it's complicated, and working to establish sort of an analogous royalty structure that can be a win for the music industry and also allow Pandora to find success is the tricky formula that we have to try to replicate country for country. And we have people all over the world that are having those conversations, but so far the only good news we have is this Australia-New Zealand news.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's limited, but it certainly is expanding.
It's a start. Yep.
You know, it's interesting when anybody who's familiar with Twit TV, where I work, we have a lot of Australian viewers and listeners, and most of the world, whenever we have Pandora-based stories of exciting stuff that we talk about, advances or what's new with Pandora, we get a lot of feedback from people saying, "Well, I hate it when you talk about a service that I can't get." Yeah. So the Australians, particularly, were pretty excited about that.
Right. One less country to complain.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So you mentioned the personalization, but Pandora did roll out quite a few new social features this year, particularly for anybody who's accessing Pandora via mobile. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of that stuff?
So the basic kind of underlying mechanism of Pandora is something we call the Music Genome Project. And so what we do is we have a team of professional musicians that come to the office every day, put headphones on, and listen to music kind of one song at a time, everything that ultimately plays on Pandora, and they analyze those tracks against hundreds of different musicological attributes. Kind of, not are there guitars, but what kind of guitars, how are the guitars played, what role does the guitar play in the overall composition. There are 20 or so attributes that describe the vocal performance alone, how gravelly, how breathy, how much falsetto is used, is it male, is it female, and on and on. And that's an important piece of the puzzle of how we make playlists, because when you tell us that you like the Beatles, we can go and really understand what they are about musicologically. But the other thing that we do is we take all of this feedback that we get from our listeners, now more than 20 billion with a B thumbs up and thumbs down, that helps us understand beyond the musicology from the Music Genome Project, kind of, in many ways, the social construct around music. It allows us to identify patterns that are about culture. Right. So there's a bunch of sort of social dimensions in the algorithms that generate the playlist experience on Pandora. But what Sarah's getting at is that we've just rolled out new versions of Pandora for mobile that add a whole kind of lean-in social dimension to the experience of Pandora. So I can find you on Pandora, I can follow you, I can see the stations you're tuning into, the feedback that you're giving, but I can also find, that guy from the record store down the street that we're not friends in real life, but he's become a musical mentor to me, and I can see what he's doing on Pandora. Because we think that as interesting it is to understand what your friends are listening to, there's this kind of whole other world of musical influencers out there that are an important part of music discovery for you, but maybe not the people that you enjoy cocktails with on Friday night.
I know some of the many folks who are in the European market would be familiar with Spotify, Spotify users. Spotify is one of the internet streaming music services that is not a direct competitor to Pandora, but has a lot of emphasis on social features. Sure. Why don't I see more of Pandora in, let's say, like the Facebook Open Graph, which is something that's been very successful for Spotify?
Sure. So, with these new mobile clients, of course, another thing that you can do beyond kind of interacting socially on Pandora is you can share your music discoveries through to Facebook as well. The thing that we've done so far with respect to the Open Graph is we're having a lot of conversations with our listeners about how they want to use that feature. I think that there's a segment of our audience that's very, very interested in this kind of flip a switch, and everything that I do on Pandora is automatically shared.
Right.
But candidly, I think the vast majority of our listeners like to play a more active role in that, to explicitly tell the system when they want to share a discovery through to Facebook. So we're still kind of exploring the topic of how best to integrate the social graph features into Pandora for that kind of lean-back automatic sharing experience, and that's something that it seems likely will be part of the future for us as well.
What about Spotify Radio? Spotify was less of a direct competitor than it is now. That there is a feature beyond the subscription service that allows me to have something that seems Pandora-like. It's, do you like this artist? Here's more from the artist, and artist similar to that. What do you make of the clones?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's flattering, right, from the standpoint that we started out down this path 8.5 years ago and debuted this really straightforward, simple product that was, tell us one thing about your musical interests and we'll take care of the rest. And as other models have come, it's always interesting to see them adopt your feature set. Yeah. I think that you know, companies come from a sense of purpose and mission and a desire to be the best in the world at something. And I think that at Pandora, our ambition is to define what the future of radio is. How do we take the best of traditional radio, which we think is kind of simplicity, ubiquity, a kind of serendipity, a mix of familiar music and new music, and of course the ability to access it anytime and anywhere you want to be entertained. You know, our ambition is to mix all of those positive attributes of traditional radio with what makes the internet great, which is this ability to personalize, to have a one-to-one conversation with an audience. And so that's what gets us out of bed every day. Make great playlists, make them really, really easy to access, make those stations available absolutely everywhere, define the future of what radio looks like. I think my sense from talking to Daniel and many at Spotify is that, you know, their ambition really is to be kind of the future of the record store, if you like, which we think is a great complement to the Pandora experience. You know, you have this serendipitous, discovery-oriented, lean-back listening experience on something like Pandora, which in the US, the sort of the mix of radio hours to owned music or subscription service music is on the order of about 80% radio, 20% owned. So we're happy to kind of, you know, experiment and explore and push the industry forward on the radio side. And you know, it's hard to be anything but encouraged by great entrepreneurs like Daniel and his team exploring that. What does the future of owned music look like?
Do you ever consider that having direct licensing deals with companies might be the easier way to go?
Yeah, so what she's alluding to is that in the United States, the licensing structure for Pandora is derived from the US copyright law. So there's a statutory license that allows us to do what we do without having to have directly negotiated licenses with the record labels and so forth. And it's very likely that in other international settings we will have to pursue direct licensing. And so I think that at least in that context, there's that may well be part of our future. And in, you know, in the U.S., we just benefit from this broader construct that allows us to not have to worry too much about some of those details.
Well, and possibly if the right legislation gets passed, you'll pay less than you do now. Maybe a little bit closer to what a satellite radio company might pay, for example.
There is this dialogue going on in the United States right now about an esoteric bit of the rate-setting process for the license that we use. The way the system is structured today, and this is rather remarkable, really, if you have a device that has an FM antenna, a satellite antenna, and a Wi-Fi antenna, depending on which antenna a music service comes in on, the rate-setting process that defines what the company that provides that stream is radically different.
Sure. Terrestrial, for example, pays nothing.
Terrestrial pays nothing. Satellite pays a small percentage of revenue, under 10%. Pandora pays a per track fee, which last year was on the order of 50% of our revenue. And this is all, these discrepancies are all because the rules by which the rates are set by these copyright royalty judges in the US are not consistent. And so we have a bill in front of Congress that aims to bring some consistency to that decision-making process. It doesn't actually set rates, though.
Sure. Do you see some artists speaking out that internet radio companies are, they're just in it for the profits, and not enough money is coming to the artists, and nobody should have their fees lowered? I mean, is it disheartening? I mean, you work for a company that's all about the love of music, right? To have some people who are creating music that you love they're not on your team, and maybe it's because they don't quite understand your motivation.
Yeah, I mean, Pandora is a company of musicians. It was founded by a professional touring musician. This Music Genome Project, which is kind of our life's work, if you like, is staffed entirely with professional musicians. I came to the company out of a passion for sharing music with friends and family, and now tens of millions of Americans. and I think we are somewhat unique from the standpoint that we have embraced from the very beginning that artists and songwriters absolutely deserve to get paid, and as much as that, they deserve to all be able to find an audience. And what's neat about Pandora is that we play more independent music really than any other venue, certainly in the United States, probably in the world. It's a place for an artist to find an audience that they could never otherwise reach. And we'd like to see a system that ensures that environments like Pandora that are a friend to independent artists and emerging artists can be successful against competition from things like satellite and terrestrial radio and so forth that don't play nearly as much independent music and don't have the same mission to help artists find an audience. So I'm not sure it's disheartening exactly, but it does, it motivates me to get out there and have those conversations so that we can, articulate what we're trying to do directly without a bunch of kind of people trying to spin it for us.
Right. One last question. I know we're almost out of time. LeWeb mentioned before we walked on stage, Pandora's in something like 75 different cars.
Right.
I mean, there is a consumer electronics push that Pandora is definitely in the middle of now.
Yeah. So so Pandora's success was tremendously accelerated by mobile, of course. When the iPhone launched, we had maybe 13 million listeners in the US. Fast forward 4 years, and we have over 175 million registered listeners. But in that same period of time, we've made a huge investment in getting in consumer electronics devices as well. So we're in over 700 different devices for your home. So that ranges from televisions and Blu-ray players and bedside table radios to there's a refrigerator that can stream Pandora.
Nice.
And also huge push into automotive. So when you see 75 cars, you can literally go onto the dealer lots in the States, point at a car, and it as often as not has a Pandora integration that allows you to use your cell phone and its data plan to connect to the internet, but all of the Pandora experiences in the dash are controlled by your voice in the car. You never touch your phone or have to look at it.
Is there any, I don't know, a new consumer electronics that we can look forward to Pandora being in 2013? That it isn't already?
Gosh, I'm sure that there is.
Dishwasher, coffee maker.
Exactly, toaster oven, I think.
Those are great.
Yeah.
They're great little devices.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're out of time. Thanks, everybody, for being here and listening, and thanks to you, Tom.
Thanks, Sarah.
All right.